LLMs, as we know them, and what they do and what they're expected to do is set by very few. But with an automated agent, I believe that the expectation is that it's going to be solely dedicated to your interests, right? And your parameters and your definitions. We started to ship to our customers boxes with 800 GPUs, one server, 2 GPUs in, you can process, 400, 600 billion parameters.
This is After the Magic, a limited series podcast in which Gam Diaz and Sergio Maldonado will discuss the impact of Agentic AI on various industries. Gam and Sergio have grown up professionally in a world in which Forrester Research, or Gartner, threw its famous Magic Quadrant, determined, as it by divine designation, the most impactful or advanced technology vendors. It occurred to them that the explosion of startups and competing technologies called for a very different approach to telling the signal from the noise. And it had to begin with two basic principles: unsponsored realism and extreme curiosity. At the same time, every analysis was to be mapped to human values and individual agency. And it is with that mission that they are now humbly bidding for a few minutes of your time. Please bear with us as we polish this over time, but we do hope that you find it valuable and, in a way, unique. Angel Maldonado is founder and CEO at Empathy Holdings, home of Empathy.AI, MotiveMarket, VisiblePrivacy, and the search and discovery products Motive.co and Empathy.co that power over 3,000 small and large shops worldwide. Angel started his career working for Autonomy, where he helped clients on pioneering enterprise search projects for 7 years before founding Empathy.co. He is currently based in London. With our guest, we have learned about current trends at the intersection of traditional product search and large language models, as retailers prepare for an agentic world that combines customer centricity with privacy by design.
Angel, welcome to After the Magic.
Thank you so much, Sergio. Happy to be here.
Cam, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
And with Angel, you share a few things. I share some things as well. He's my brother. And you share the fact that you both studied at the University of Liverpool.
Liverpool has just, in terms of the university, it's got better and better. I mean, it's got a really good reputation now.
Well, it was very challenging for me when I went there, and I went there after being in San Francisco. So it was quite a shock, and I met the most wonderful people, and I was given the most incredible opportunities.
So you were in San Francisco first?
That's right. Sergio invited me to go to San Francisco. He suggested the plan, and it was a great plan, yeah.
That's interesting. But okay, when you and I studied computer science, it was very different to what computer science is now, and even more different to what it's going to become. Seeing as you're developing technology and working with AI, what do you think holds for students coming out now? They went in before LLMs and ChatGPT, and now they're coming out into an environment where coding is different, systems are different.
Well, maybe starting from what computer science had and has today, and will have, that it still remains, is that it's very performative, right? It's just a discipline like any other engineering discipline that is based on that which is measurable, quantifiable. It is, it's built on data, inputs, outputs. It's just the mechanics, seeing systems as things that perform a given function with some objectives. So that remains. And the same way as 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, the most brilliant computer scientists were those who were able to look outside that schema and break some of those disciplinary boundaries, and being able and feeling comfortable by embracing that which was outside of what the data gives. The same thing is happening today with LLMs and generative technologies, with the same force. Those engineers who have the ability to look beyond the systems themselves and have another kind of preoccupation or thinking consequentially beyond that which performs something, another kind of advancement, will continue to succeed. Maybe it's a lot more difficult now if you are only in the mechanics of it, and you don't feel comfortable with that which escapes what data gives.
I like that. I think during my career, computing has become much less about the mechanics and more and more and more about the how we're applying that mechanic out. So yeah, it is interesting that we're being freed up from more and more of the mechanics, and now we've been freed up from coding. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting time. Things are going to get faster, if nothing else.
Yeah.
So yeah, yet another thing we've got in common is e-commerce. I think I cut my teeth in supply chain systems. We did a lot of work with Walmart when I was at First Retail, and we were starting to work with retail product catalogs. And I know it's your big area. Wondering what you're thinking for those today working in retail e-commerce who've spent pretty much all of their career working with Google and search optimization and traditional forms of e-commerce and search engine marketing. What do you think is about to change?
Well, I hope that collectively the industry and everybody who participates in it, comes to this realization again that these retail systems can't just be seen as spaces to maximize some production cycle, trying to achieve X and Y decimal points improvements, trying to leverage that which is there already. And maybe we start to be open to consider that to be different and to trigger growth is not just about pushing and trying to add more of the same. And they see what's happening as an opportunity to create the new and to understand that their relationship with the products and the catalogs, the relationship with the process that flows through these can be different and can evoke trust and can evoke joy and can be understood intrinsically and transparently. Maybe there is an opportunity for this collective realization that there is more to a catalog than just maximizing its SEO opportunities, its conversion opportunities, etc. At the end of the day, all the products that people love and the products that people define themselves with goes beyond the catalog itself, right? There is another kind of relationship there. So maybe this is very positive, but I hope we realize that you can invent truly new worlds of relationship, right?
Nobody's ever said joy to me when talking about this topic.
Yeah, of course, because joy is not something that you can measure. And you can do approximations of it, whether something is playful, something is joyful, something is pleasant, something is surprisingly positive. All that stuff to a digital team that's dedicated to maximizing measured KPIs, that is not important. Joy is a feeling that you cannot measure and therefore doesn't exist.
So speaking of joy, let me add to this and pull from joy, right? So in a way, LLMs provide an opportunity to be more human-centric because it is about language. It is about defining a new interface, right? And so I wonder about your vision, Angel, for the impact of LLMs in retail. How do you see that? The impact, how have you adapted? What's your journey to integrate LLMs within the retail experience, the search experience coming from the world where everything's indexed?
Well, multiple explanations to and angles to, needless to say, but maybe one that is important to pay attention to is the fact that LLMs, as we know them, and what they do and what they're expected to do is set by very few. Just a handful of big players are setting the notion of what LLMs can do, right? And everybody else pretty much follows. So the notion of what is intelligence, the notion of what is efficiency, the notion of what is value, and in what ways LLMs can apply to intelligence, to efficiencies, to value. So from that one particular perspective that I'm very interested, there is almost an attempt to colonize what is the relationship with the customer in certain terms, in the same way that Amazon colonized what good commerce was to do with convenience, right? So maybe now they're trying to propel the idea that intelligent commerce is to do with the notion of efficiencies again, mindlessly or carelessly, as per or with other important aspects of what the relationship between consumers and brands means. And I think that needs to be challenged. Yeah.
I'm thinking people are coming, like ourselves, we're coming at retail with this new perspective. As consumers, we are now embraced this new joy as well, because we can talk to a system and we can explore things and research. And if we do not really know what we want to buy, so we're not yet in the Amazon cold scenario where you fulfill a very clear demand, there's an experience in search, in research. And so I see that from Empathy, you have approached both the single store, single brand, single retailer experience to adapt to this new interface or to embrace the new possibilities, and also the idea of aggregation, the multi-store, multi-retailer experience. And at the same time, you had to find a way to go the extra mile in terms of precisely what you're saying now. How do you avoid falling in the trap of an OpenAI, Anthropic, and so on, defining what should be the LLM experience?
I mean, again, how to summarize this? I think a good story, and I think it's a very important story, is that imagine Sergio and Gam that we didn't speak the same language. You didn't speak my language, I didn't speak your language. We imagine that we spoke different languages and we needed to talk. So imagine that you throw a word at me that I don't understand. So what do? I try to present to you, like in a game, tons of options. And I think maybe what he meant by that word is water. Maybe he meant bottles. Maybe he meant places. Maybe he meant images. Maybe he meant videos. Maybe he meant, I don't know, just whatever else. So because of that limitation, we try to respond to each other with an incredible wealth of options that fulfill a screen. So that is what has been happening up until now with information retrieval and search. This is why you have the kind of experiences that you have, because nobody understood each other. So you have to respond with all those facets and filters and rows and rows and rows of lists, just an array, a dump out from whatever the source. So the basis of that language, you say that particular way of responding, in that communication, because let's not forget this is a communication system, is that we don't understand each other. And therefore, I need to know, what did you do before? Maybe if I know what he did before, I'm going to figure out what he means now. And, what did he do before, etc., etc. Maybe I'm going to write down what he's doing now. So the next time he comes, I can have a little bit of a context of this person that I don't know. We don't speak the same language. But now all of a sudden we need to realize that we speak the same language. And you can go and talk and I can understand perfectly what you mean. You can provide a concurrent, consistent, concentric description with all the richness of whatever it is that you have in mind, and I am going to be able to distill and perfectly give you what you want. So then I don't have to give you all those filters and facets, and I don't have to give you all those rows, and I don't have to put all that stuff. It's already clean and lean, and I just tell you, here it goes. This is what you need. So that is an important realization, because a lot of people think that they need to talk to search systems in the way they used to talk, with that intrinsic embedded frustration. It's not going to get me. Oh God, I'm just going to speak like one or two words. And there was no solution to that. All the predictive, the type aheads, the suggestions, the trends, the whatever, boosting, whatever, contextualization, personalization, blah, blah, blah. But now all that is just not needed. Even why do I have to know what you did before? Why do I have to know that you always drink coffee? Might be that today you feel like tea. Why do I have to know that you did this before or the other? What do I have to know that you have this gender preference? Maybe I can be free from all that, because you can talk to me and tell me exactly what is that which you need. So I think this is really, really exciting, because on the new rules of the communication, the context has changed, and the context defines the quality, and now we can understand each other. And now we are transitioning gradually into that new state, because the old state is just not going to last. It's just not needed.
I'm having this conversation with Tony Fish about agency and how our agency is being eroded, like little by little. It's taking our data, it's finding out more about us, and we have lost the power of lots of things that we don't need, but now, it's kind of coming into fundamental decision making. And one of the phrases that Tony uses all the time is, who is supervising your thinking? So when Google gives you a recommendation, Google's recommendation is, yeah, it's acceptable to you, but it's the most profitable to it. And so what I'm feeling that we as individual humans need is, we need to be assured of our agency. If somebody is making a recommendation, and particularly as we're going to be using personal AI, who is making that recommendation and what's their interest in making that recommendation? These things aren't necessarily declared. And so I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, of course, there's no way you're going to trust it, right? And if there is no trust, there is absolutely nothing. So, I mean, I don't understand, and forgive me if I'm very maybe naive on this, but I don't understand any possibility of success or any form of augmentation or representation of an individual's intentions unless this augmentation is guaranteed to act exclusively on the interests of the individual. How could I augment or relate to that in any way that is going to defend my interests? Will I use any agent that I know could have any spurious interests to fulfill as long as mine? I don't think so, right? I mean, when you use agents in the real world to buy a property, to find a school, not that I do that, but some people do. And if you use an agent to, I don't know, to help you to find a job, all those actors have an interest that is different to yours, right? And you make it part of the game. But with an automated agent, I believe that the expectation is that it's going to be solely dedicated to your interests, right? And your parameters and your definitions.
I'd argue the other way. I'd say that without thinking, we go where Waze tells us to go. We don't know what Waze is trying to do. When we ask Google, we believe that it's giving us the best results in the first 2 pages. We don't think about the million pages that we don't look at Netflix makes recommendations. Meta recommends Friends to us. It's kind of scary how much we have delegated. And so I think there's a really big conversation that needs to be had for organizations that are developing personal agents is, how do we decouple the personal agent that is working for the bank versus the personal agent that is working for me? We trust the bank's brand. Is there a personal agent of a brand that I do trust that will act in my interest?
Let me ask you something. When you use, GPT or Perplexity or whatever, and you compose a complex topic, and you prepare your research on your scenario, and you provide your materials, and you advance in your actions, do you trust that process? Do you see the results and you think maybe there are other interests in what I am seeing? Maybe the way I have defined this process, something has managed to squeeze in and alter the direction. Do you trust the process, or you don't?
No, I don't trust anything anymore. I'm very skeptical. And so wherever I use those things, I ask it for links and I always go back to the link and I use that. I'm using it as a gigantic search engine, but then I'm using it to, like, it's pen and paper as well. But I'm not trusting what it gives back. I mean, OpenAI hasn't got its revenue model sorted out. When it does, I think we're going to be the dependency that we're building on these tools so fast means that when they decide they've got a revenue model, we are at its mercy because we will be dependent. People are designing their jobs. I mean, fortunately, I think LLMs are shadow AI inside the company, but the moment we start to implement these as actual AI, then the company is dependent and the productivity of that organization is dependent. And then they'll turn on their revenue spigots and we'll have to pay.
And how do you feel uh, about being able to implement all these solutions through practices and AI governance, whereby you don't use a third party and you have technologies that compute within your sphere of control?
I'm recommending that to everybody right now. I
And
think
will
that
you trust it then, right? You will feel comfortable with it.
still, yeah, I've got to wonder, what's in the algorithm if you're not writing it yourself, if you're using third-party algorithms. Yeah. What's your opinion on that? Sorry, this turned into you interviewing me.
No, this is perfect because I wanted to land on that. Let me just interrupt for a second. So this is very good because in the end, there's two levels of trust. There's the company that is now adopting the technology, and even before we fast forward to agents, perhaps we jumped ahead of ourselves with that because we had prior discussions, you and I, and previous interviews, Gam, on agents. But before we get to that, you need to, as you said, trust the system. So if you're a company that is adopting the technology, implementing LLMs, then there's one level of trust. And you are, in a way, solving the problem by hosting your system and so on. Whether consumers are then trusting you, even though there's no third parties, because you will have your own interest to push the products for which you've got too much stock and so on, that's always going to happen. That is certainly part of the game. But I wanted to pull from that. So, Angel, from your experience doing that, what you've learned and where you've landed in terms of helping companies deploy their own systems and their own locally hosted or self-hosted solutions, how you're working with models, how you avoid the top 5 by embracing open weight models, or whatever you want to add to that.
I'm going to go straight to the end of the story, not to tell you how it happened. And the end of the story is a box that is manufactured in Peterborough, the company is called MaxiCool, and it's a tiny little company. And basically, they manufacture these incredible rack boxes that we put GPUs in them. So that's where we are today on the year 2025, 17th of July. we started to ship to our customers boxes with hundreds GPUs, one server, two GPUs in. You can process, 400, 600 billion parameters, incredible AI routine, applying the right gears at the right moment. And suddenly companies that own incredible intellectual property that they will no way consider to work with any of the big five, terrified of doing that, suddenly something clicks in their head and they're holy s, can I have this within my premises, like back to the year 2000s or 90s? Can I have all my customer data, all my intellectual property, everything interactable, retrievable, generatable on a space, computational space that I control, that I just completely unplug from the internet? So that's where we are today. And it's as if the cloud had rain, right? And you know this very well. This is the space of private clouds. Even big companies like HP are offering now private clouds. And the idea that you start, you're a law firm and you decide, hey, wait a minute, can I just have all this myself? Or you are a school, or you're a pediatrician, or you're an orthodontist, or whatever you are, or you're a household. And the idea of being able to have this control. Of course, each of these boxes that have those GPU servers, the whole installation is complex, the minivan cabling or whatever they call it, all the process of setting that up, provisioning it, setting the operationalization of that, the Kubernetes external controls, being able to run in there and continuously update and change the LLM models that run in there. Also the realization as the gears of a car, as I was saying, one of the things that we released on Hugging Face that got the most success, I think over 1,000 downloads in like 3 months, was the Empathy.AI router, which all that it does is to say, depending on what's happening, I'm going to go to a bigger, smaller, different model. So it all became very sustainable. And I talk about those boxes because the boxes themselves, they call Maxi Cool because they're refrigerated. They are like the fridges of a hotel, of a minibar, right? Anyway, but all very aesthetic with these nice glass doors, etc. But the idea that you trust it because you see it, and you're talking with the author of a book, and the author of the book is thinking, I'm going to put my book in there. Now I'm going to do this because it's my asset. I feel it as something that's mine. Or what we did with the Project Gutenberg. I don't know if you know the Project Gutenberg. They have 70,000 books, all intellectual property free books that, they are public domain. And we make them all searchable, findable, discoverable, relatable on R1, Quain, as foundational with many other smaller models, and all running on this self-hosted infrastructure. Or what we do for right now, I think it is available in MotiveMarket.com in the UK, a chat to speak to tons and tons of catalogs, doing a very sustainable approach to that. And again, computing on a sphere of privacy and pure, literal, physical AI governance. So that triggers a different perception.
An important concern that everyone is raising, every law firm that could be really enticed by this, hallucinations. People are really scared of it. In retail, you cannot really hallucinate because you need to lead to an actual SKU or an actual product. In product catalogs, the same thing. How do you make sure? How have you sorted that problem to leverage the best of LLMs at the same time, the certainty that you're going to land on something real?
Yeah, there are many solutions there, but I'm going to tell you the most hardcore one that people feel super safe and sound with that, because it's absolutely literal. And it connects with the notion of combining generative with conventional retrieval. We do this project for, Bosch, Siemens, Gaggenau, BSH in Germany, Munich, and they have a wealth of manuals for the dishwashers, the appliances, the ovens, etc. There's no way you can do a retrieval in there with generative that is going to hallucinate or confabulate, as Carissa calls it, right? And it's very simple. Basically, you go there and you say, I just don't know how to add salt to my dishwasher. And the thing comes back to you and it tells you, well, I understand that you want to add salt to your dishwasher, but unless you tell me which one is your dishwasher, I'm not going to be able to answer. And here is where you can find the reference for your dishwasher. Here's a little picture. This is how you access it. And this is the way the number looks. Give me the number and I will be able to answer. Now imagine this in terms of computational complexity, how efficient it is. Then they give you the code of the dishwasher, the actual model. And we run a conventional search. SN-134567, a retrieval that gives us the actual manual that has 42, 47, 57 pages. And we take all those pages and we load them into a collection of prompts. It's called LLM reduce. So the next request that you do, although being generative, is happening within that context alone. So you are not, it's just its domain, its context is loaded to be that and that thing only. So it doesn't know about anything else that's happening outside that. That's one practice that is the most hardcore one. There are many others, but that's solid. Of course, it comes accompanied by other elements in the default or must-in prompting. But the idea is that all the world that can see is those 42, 47 pages of a manual. Yeah.
But yet the LLM understands from its general training how to speak.
Yeah.
But exactly. Then it won't bring spurious context and it won't make strange inferences that don't exist from that.
Can only compose from that which is fully factual in the actual set of pages that constitute the manual. Yes.
I watched a terrible movie the other day, but it had a really good phrase in it. There's facts and there's things that are true.
Yeah, well, yeah, nothing is absolutely truthful.
Yeah. There's another thing. There's something we haven't touched on, which is also how Qwen or DeepSeek were trained. That's something else that we're still dragging this. At least you're curtailing what it does, and you're taking control of any data that is passed through inference, as many people are also worried of that. But you're still dragging, you're still inheriting. So, for example, the European Commission just released these new cards, these model cards for general purpose models to fill out, where they share how they were trained, where it was public domain. So, for example, now you are relying on the public domain through Project Gutenberg, for example. But still, we are dragging DeepSeek into the equation, and that was pre-trained. How would you deal with that in terms of governance? Simply filling out the form as a nutrition label and hoping that everything is okay because you're going to apply filters and controls when you use it, or how do you see that?
There's no solution to that now. Not even the kindest of LLMs, they want to reveal what are the foundational trainings. The only thing that we can do is that there is no response that incorporates anything within a given context or a given domain. But its capacity to understand that you tell a story and you say, I'm a 19-year-old, it's the first time I setting up a dishwasher. My sister is taking the piece that I am useless. I don't know how to add salt to it. For it to be able to understand that, which it does, it understands that, it needs that foundational model, right? But eventually you cut that through and you say, okay, good to hear, but give me your number, give me your SKU number. And once you provide the SKU number, it will answer you within that context. That's one bridge to that. And think of that in case law or in norms and you or in clinical records. You have to stick to the domain of that particular piece of information. So you can navigate the semantic awareness of that which is being requested the same way we can, and I hate those metaphors that combine the way we operate or thinking process. But then you respond, and your response can only be articulated from words that exist in that set of data that you provided for the context of the prompt.
Think of a baby. I'm picturing this idea all of a sudden in the womb as it's forming, taking shape, human shape, and it's listening to all this swearing. You know, the baby's born in a terrible house. Everyone is swearing, insulting each other. There's biases all around. And still, the baby is born and he learned the language through swearing. Again, terrible insults, lots of violence. Everything is there, you know, somewhere in its brain. But it learned how to speak. And because all that baby will have to do, the baby is the LLM, so we detach the human element now, not to be too concerned about it. And now this creature learned how to speak, right? Hopefully, all of these things are not going to flourish at some point. Crazy thought. Gam, what's your last question, please?
Um, I am in love with the Maxi Cool.
You've seen it.
No, I haven't. Sergio's told me about it, and I just grabbed onto it because I think, there's a generation that's grown up with stuff in the cloud. There's a generation that doesn't quite understand all of this. And what I'm seeing is one of the barriers to adoption of a lot of this for enterprise, a lot of the agentic technology for enterprise, is that the CISOs and the C-suite don't understand, and they are scared because this is very unknown. And, if you're talking about agentic, my analogy is that whereas we used to secure a building, we're now trying to secure a city. We don't know the actors that are coming in. Our actors are going to be talking to other ones who are talking to other ones, and they've got different, even if they're not malicious, they've got different objectives and they're optimized for different things. And so to be able to bring this technology or this capability into a closed, safe, secure system is fascinating. And I think just the fact that you're offering that will open the doors and accelerate adoption. I'm wondering what plans that you had, if you can share any of those plans, because that's a game changer for me.
Yeah, I think so. I think so because you don't make any deal. You don't arrive at any agreement. You don't relate with anything or anyone unless there is trust. Trust is the single coin of, delivering a successful product or a successful relationship or a successful place. Trust must be there. And with this current situation where the actual computers, you very well reflected, Gam, what are the interests behind those agents or the parties that are involved? If you really have a commitment for AI to succeed, you really have to make AI understandable and trusted, and why not joyful, right? But that, and I think this can be the key. This can be the trigger. That can be the catalyst to, deliver a use of AI that can be put in line to the many, 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 many different situations and companies and realities that nobody feels comfortable in handing out their intellectual property to any of the big five or whatever, that they have intentions that are endless, right? And everyone feels comfortable in trying to deliver to something that they know they have in control. So for us in the future, to be absolutely, completely frank, I just don't care. I just don't care where this is going. I just know that we're going to really push through with this idea of self-hosted own AI governance. As Shoshana Zuboff says, AI equals AI governance. It's not AI, it's AI governance. We're going to push through with that idea. It's very difficult to succeed because you will need to have a huge operation, and maybe a hard rain is going to fall on the clouds, and maybe the cloud providers start to see these opportunities. NVIDIA, you saw it. They released these NVIDIA desktops for $3,900. We're on the waiting list for since they released it in June to buy quite a big number of these machines. Now imagine, Gam, that everybody was buying those things in schools, in places, in law firms, in government institutions, and being able to freely know that they compute in everything in there. And they have staff that are able to release the configurations so that this can run, right? Maybe we're heading that way. And maybe in the same way that desktop computers in the 80s started to propagate on every household and how that meant, and then the internet came after, maybe something similar could happen. And maybe then you can have people trusting and leveraging AI inline to the identity. And one more thing, this is what we started before. What is a good business? What is intelligence? What is quality? at the end of the day, it's all about differentiation. It's all about identity, unique businesses offering unique differentiating values. How on earth am I going to deliver a unique differentiating value if the way I relate to my customers through these new technologies is dictated by 5 vendors? I need to find a way to put in line all that technology to my capacity, my unique creative power, or delivering very differentiating, unique flavors to that which constitutes my business, right? So maybe the common sense of that and the force of that we deliver this. Maybe Sergio, you can put as a soundtrack for this podcast. A hard rain is going to fall. Maybe you can sing it.
Maybe. Well, that's not in the public domain. But if I sing it, there's only a performance sort of issue. All right. Well, thank you, Angel. This was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Gam. Thank you so much, Sergio.
Thank you. That was fascinating.
After the Magic is produced by Gam Diaz and Sergio Maldonado. AI voiceovers are generated with 11 Labs. This show accepts no sponsors, but you are welcome to reach out to our hosts if you believe you have a mission worth their time. Find them at afterthemagic.com.